Okay, let's catch up on Pr17. Greetings, everybody. Welcome back after a week. So we've got Pr17 realizing that it's time for him to retire. So he gives his remaining responsibilities to his children to make sure that the citizens in the world are still well taken care of. And then he and his wife go alone to the forest. When he gets to the forest, he watches how the spiritualists behave there to learn what they're doing and why they're doing it. And then once he feels like he's got that figured out, he then begins to practice. And he begins to practice with a lot of enthusiasm, very similar to his grandfather, Dhruva, grandfather or great-grandfather, his ancestor, Dhruva. And then we followed it up to how he's doing austerities, quite extreme, and controlling his bodily energy, drawing it up. Now we come to to this week's section. Now what I think we'll do is kind of like last time, read through it so you get an overview of what's going to happen, and then go back and discuss the points. I maybe go all the way back to the Sanskrit. Ready? That great man worshipped the original person using the highest form of self-realization yoga that he had learned from the blessed child Sanat. Always eagerly striving to emulate the divine nature of great persons, he became unattracted to anything other than love for the all-spiritual, all-attractive. When all of his endeavors aimed at the all-attractive, his pure existence constantly, perfectly, and completely dwelt upon that. Wisdom arose, generating a disinterest that was sharper than a knife, and cut away the confusing and distorting coverings of his consciousness. Having cut away all extraneous self-concepts, he firmly achieved his true self. When that happened, he became fully fulfilled and truly desireless. He did not even endeavor to maintain his yoga practice, for it had already achieved its ends. The practice of yoga is relevant only as long as it has not produced its ultimate result, ardent attraction to the sound of Vishnu's fame. Having united himself completely with himself, there was no further purpose to continue his life as a great emperor. It was then that he abandoned his body and firmly, completely attained spiritual existence. That's the bit that I got translated this week. Next week, you'll hear the exact asana that he used for dying and how he dealt with the chakras, and then how his wife dealt with the funeral, and then some praise given by onlookers, and then the story's done. So let's go back and look at some of the outstanding points. The first point is that the king is trying to follow the system that Sanat Kumar gave him. So that's interesting, and it's the self-realization yoga that he learned from the that he learned from the blessed child Sanat. When we go, I think we'll go all the way back to the Sanskrit, so then you'll hear these Sanskrit terms. Always eagerly striving to emulate the nature of great persons. So again, he's trying to emulate Sanat Kumar's instructions, and he's trying to emulate the, what are they called, vanaprasthis that he sees around him in the forest. That's the way that you do yoga. Not only yoga, that's the way that you do anything successfully. Unless you're 1 in a million person that already did something in your past life. The way that you do anything successfully is you listen carefully to the person who's teaching you about the thing, and you emulate their instructions, and you emulate their behavior, and you emulate the behavior of other people who are good at it. If you want to be a good dancer, you watch your dance instruction, you watch the person teaching you the dance, you listen to it, you pay attention to it, you emulate the dancer, you try to deeply emulate them, you emulate other dancers that dance good, and that's how you become a good dancer. Why people think it's completely different when it comes to spirituality is beyond me. Because spirituality is a completely different thing. It's not a completely different thing. It's another subject which you learn. They think that you shouldn't listen to anybody else or read any book or anything like that. It's going to manifest spontaneously in your heart. What makes this subject so incredibly different from everything? Talk about duality. Talk about dualisticness. You're making such a duality between this subject of spirituality and every other subject that ever existed. I thought everything was one, according to these grand spiritualists. So if everything is one, why should spirituality be such a different subject than dance or cooking or whatever it is that you learn? So this is how you learn and practice spirituality and yoga, by studying it carefully from a master, by emulating the master, and by emulating not just the master, but all the people who are better at it than you are. That's how you do it. That's what the king did. That's what Pr17 did. Always eagerly striving to emulate the divine nature of great persons. Then what is the result of all of his yoga? He becomes so attracted to one thing that he loses all his attraction for everything else. That's also the key to detachment from things that you don't like. Like if you want to quit smoking, it's not very easy to quit anything. Especially not things that give you some sort of a chemical pleasure. It's not very difficult to quit if you want to quit smoking. The key to quit smoking is not to quit smoking, but to start doing something else that replaces the feeling or whatever it is that you get from smoking, so that you cannot focus on smoking. You want to forget, you just had a bad relationship and you want to forget about the person. How do you forget about the person? By sitting in your house all day wishing you forgot about the person? By going out and doing something else, or the best thing is meeting somebody else. Then you forget about that person. So the best way to achieve detachment from falsehood is to achieve attachment to truth. You can't just sit around and try to detach yourself from falsehood. Oh, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not this, neti, this, not this, not this, not that. So he achieved love for the all spiritual, all attractive. We'll look at the Sanskrit terms for that too. It's very interesting. And therefore he became unattracted to anything else. And what is he attracted for? Listen carefully to the wording. He achieved attraction to love for the all attractive. Be careful how you understand this concept, because it will mean the difference between 80-mile-an-hour progress and 30-mile-an-hour progress in your Bhakti Yoga. If you are looking for attachment to Krishna, or if you're looking for attachment to love for Krishna, it will mean a big difference to how well you succeed in Bhakti Yoga. The king is not described as having developed attachment to the all spiritual, all attractive. He developed attachment to love for the all spiritual, all attractive. Consider that. With all of his endeavors aimed at the all attractive, your endeavors always follow what you're attracted to. So once he gained full attraction to Bhagavan and all disinterest in everything else, then all of his endeavors means body, mind, words. Mind means feelings and thoughts. And once you generate the attraction, then all of your concentration is captivated by the attracted thing, etc. Right? So it says, with all of his endeavors aimed at the all attractive, his pure existence constantly, perfectly, and completely dwelt upon that. what now is produced from this, this is the end result of Gyan, or wisdom. Bhakti produces Gyan. Love produces knowledge, but knowledge doesn't produce love. Knowledge may or may not make you more suitable to be a loving person. But actually, love is independent. Love can produce everything else, but nothing can actually guarantee the production of love. So what's being described here is as a result of his love and his attachment to love. As a result of his attachment to love, knowledge came automatically. Wisdom came automatically. Gyan came automatically. What Gyan does is it does vairagya. Vairagya means the opposite of raga, the opposite of attachment. So, and Gyan is very harsh and sharp and male. This is so funny. When I was in a band, I was trying to do an unsuccessful band in California, God, like 2000 or something. The singer said some remark that I'll always remember. He said, he was some guy from Brazil or something, so it was really funny. He had these funny sayings. He said, where there's cows, there's bulls. This was his like marketing technique or something. Where there's cows, there's bulls. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that before. Maybe it's like a Spanish thing. But it was the first time I ever heard it, so I always attribute it to him. Which means where there's girls, there's going to be boys. The boys go to where the girls are. So so Bhakti is a girl. Gyan is a boy. The boy will come to where the girl is. But it shouldn't be vice versa. So similarly, when we have Bhakti, which is the feminine love, then the masculine thing comes to support it. Jnana. So, sure enough, because of his attachment to love, wisdom arose, and that generated a disinterest sharper than a knife that cut away the confusing and distorting coverings of his consciousness. We'll talk about that with the Sanskrit too. It's also interesting. Having cut away all extraneous self-concepts, what happens if you cut away all of the confusing and distorting coverings of your consciousness? Then you're left with a clear, simple understanding of your core being. So having cut away all these extraneous self-concepts, he firmly achieved his true self. When that happened, he became fully fulfilled and truly desireless. What does it mean to be desireless? It means you don't need anything. It doesn't mean you don't enjoy anything. For example, if you're eating a meal that's fantastic, you're not being plagued by desires to play a game or something. You're into the meal. It's only when you're bored that you get plagued by desires. So when if you're self-realized, then you don't have any desires. It doesn't mean that you're bored. It means the opposite. It means that you're fully thrilled and fulfilled. So by being fully fulfilled, you become desireless. If you just try to become desireless, good luck. It's like trying to quit heroin. First become fulfilled by something, then you'll be desireless to everything else. Having cut away all extraneous self-concepts, he firmly achieved his true self. When that happened, he became fully fulfilled and truly desireless. He did not endeavor to even maintain his yoga practice. So he's not going to throw it away entirely, because you see he's going to do an asana at the end and do some breath at the end. But I guess he gave up his austerities and all that stuff. Like, what's the point of doing my austerities anymore? I don't need these things anymore. I achieved this thing. But this is instantaneous, actually. It's not like he's going to hang out now for 6 weeks not doing his yoga austerities. He just says, okay, I'm done. I have nothing left to do here. I'm going to die now. He did not endeavor to even maintain his yoga practice, for it had already achieved its ends. This is the famous saying, if you climb a ladder, you don't need the ladder. You got up to the part where you are. The only reason you would need the ladder is if you want to go back down. He did not endeavor to maintain his yoga practice, for he had already achieved its ends. The practice of yoga is relevant only as long as it has not produced its ultimate result, which is love, which is bhakti. Ardent attraction to the sound of Vishnu's fame. And the way that they always describe the love is so indirect. It doesn't say that it achieved its ultimate result, Krishna. It says attraction to Krishna. Not even attraction to Krishna, attraction to Krishna's fame. Not even that, but attraction to the sound of Krishna's fame. Even that is the ultimate result. Having united himself completely with himself, there was no further purpose. That's yoga, to unite, to bring together, to join. So the best yoga is to unite Atma to Atma, self to self. Having done that, he united himself to himself. There was no further purpose to continue his life. As the emperor, he's not going to cease his existence. He's going to cease his incarnation as the emperor. It was then, so as soon as he realized, I've got no more need to do austerity, so I have no more need for this body. So it's time to go. It was then that he abandoned his body and firmly, completely attained spiritual existence. All right, so good. We have time. I would like to take you into some Sanskrit, which we haven't done in many, many days. Thank you, Alf. Yeah, Johnny brings up a good thing about AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, and how it works. It's effective. They put your fixation on a higher power, basically, and then they keep you busy. They make sure that you're busy, because if you're attracted to other things, then you won't be doing this one thing that you want to stop doing. But if you stop doing the other things, and you have nothing beyond this simple thing of like drinking, then you're going to drink. Yellow, you're on your own. Sorry. You're going to have to figure that out. I don't know, Vincent. Sort of yes, but I don't know what you're aiming at. You see, the Simone and Graziella are talking about this concept, this amazing concept of desiring love for Krishna, more than desiring Krishna. If your attraction is to Krishna, it may be for ulterior reasons. Why might you want him? You might want to have a great friend. I remember I had this friend that I really liked. Still like the guy so much. So the reason why I liked him is because the guy was big. He was cool and tough and big and strong. So when I went into all these scary, hairy, scary places that I did when I was in my teens, I felt safe. I loved the guy. What did I love? I loved the way that what this guy did for me. My image, my safety, etc. So similarly, people love God. Why? Because God's going to make your nation strong, or God's going to make your army, but he's going to empower your sword, or he's going to make you wealthy, or protect you from COVID or something. That's why you love God. Then what you actually love is your selfish concept that needs all this service from God. But if you love for the supreme object of love, then you've got it right. Not sure what Dravan is asking. All right, now let's look at the Sanskrit on these. A lot of interesting things come up about these words. So going back to the first thing, the great man worshipped the original person using the highest form of self-realization yoga he had learned from the blessed child Sanat. So that says, Sanat Kumaro Bhagavan Yad Adhyatmikam Param Yogam Tenaiva Purusham Abhajat Purusharshabha. Sanat Kumaro Bhagavan. So from the greatly blessed Sanat Kumar, the child Sanat. The child Kumar means the child, and Sanat is the guy's name. Bhagavan means super dude. Yad Adhyatmikam Param Yogam. So here's the term self-realization yoga, the highest form of the self-realization yoga that he got from Sanat Kumar. Param means highest, paramount. Yogam, the yoga. What kind of yoga? Adhyatmikam. Yet ahadhyatmikam param. What's aha? Aha. Aha. Sanat Kumar said it. That was taught. This yoga was taught by Sanat Kumar. That now makes sense. Sanat Kumar Bhagavan Yad Ahadhyatmakam Param. So this yoga is that Sanat Kumar explained is called Adhyatmakam. Atmaka means self. Of the self to the self. Atmaka yoga, self yoga. Adhyatmaka, to really establish the self, the yoga of self-realization. So Sanat Kumar's yoga that he taught Pr17 is called Dhatmika Yoga. But Dhatmika Yoga has many different stages to it. There's a stage where you're in Karma Yoga, there's a stage where you're in Jnana Yoga, and there's a stage where you're in Bhakti Yoga. The Param Adhyatmika Yoga, the topmost Adhyatmika Yoga, is the one that Pr17 was doing, which was meditation on love for Bhagavan. It's the Bhakti. And then also there's an interesting poetic device in the Sanskrit. Yogam tenaiva purusham abhajat purusharshabha. You can hear purusha twice, right? One of the purushas is Pr17, the other purusha is Vishnu. The one purusha is worshipping the other purusha. It's an interesting play on words. Purusharshabha, the best man. So I translate the Purusharshabha as the great man. Rishabha means the best. But if you translate it as the best man, it sounds like a wedding. The great man, the greatest man. Yeah. That greatest man. Greatest of men. Greatest person, because Purusha is kind of generic. The greatest of men. He's a man. The greatest of men worship the original person, Purusha. The Purusharshabha worship the Purusha using Adhyatmika Yoga Param. Good stuff? Kitna Prashna, you have a question? Next, let's look at the next text. The next text is here. Always eagerly striving to emulate the divine nature of great persons, he became unattracted to anything other than love for the all-spiritual, all-attractive. This one's Bhagavat Dharmina Sadho Shraddhaya Yatata Sada Bhaktir Bhagavati Brahman Yanya Vishaya Bhavat. So what kind of this? All these verses are tied together. Don't forget. Previously, he said he was doing Adhyatmika Yoga, Paramadhyatmika Yoga. In case you don't know what that is, the next statement is that it's Bhagavad Dharma. Dharma is... Bhagavat Dharma means Bhakti Yoga, to very simplify it. Dharma means the inherent quality of a Bhagavat, which means either Bhagavan or the Bhagavat Bhakta. So it's the yoga which is focused on Bhagavan is the one that he was performing. And the way that the sadhus do it, Bhagavad Dharmina Sadho, the way that the sadhus do Bhagavad Dharma, the way that the sadhus do the Dhatmika Puram, that's what he was trying to do. Sadhus means, sadhu is a simple word, really. It means a good person. So depending on your context, it could mean expert, it could mean saint, it can mean winner, anything like that. In this context, it means the experts of Bhakti Yoga. Shraddhaya yatata sada. Yatata means he was striving, he was working, he was struggling, he was striving, he's endeavoring. With Shraddha, with attachment, with attraction, with eagerness, with trust and faith that this is for me, this is the thing. I need to do this. Sada, always, constantly. That's how Prithu was doing his Bhakti Yoga. Constantly, always enthusiastically emulating the sadhus of Bhagavad Dharma. So that's what I'm saying here. Always eagerly striving to emulate the divine nature of great persons, the divine nature of Bhagavad Dharma, of the sadhus. He became, then the second verse, Bhaktir Bhagavati Brahmani Ananya Vishaya Bhavat. Vishaya means your goal, your objective. Typically, sense objects are called Vishaya because they're the goal of the senses. But Vishaya means any target that you have, any goal. Ananya Vishaya. Anya Vishaya means another goal, an ulterior motive is an Anya Vishaya, or another goal. Ananya Vishaya means without another goal. So that was his whole, what was his whole goal, actually? What was his whole goal of eagerly and constantly and always emulating the Bhagavad, this, what did I put it in English here? The divine nature of great persons. What was his great persons, sadhu, divine natures, Bhagavad Dharma? What was his goal in constantly emulating them? He had only one goal, not even slightly another goal. Ananya Vishaya. And what was the goal? Bhakti. Bhakti for what? Bhagavan, Brahmani. So here's what I translated as the all spiritual, all attractive. Brahman, Bhagavan. Bhagavan, who is Brahman. Brahman is pure consciousness, spirit. Bhagavan is the being of pure consciousness, spirit. The entity of pure consciousness is Bhagavan. So that's why he's described as Bhagavati Brahmani. And bhakti for that Bhagavati Brahmani was his goal, was his sole and only goal. So I put it like this. Always eagerly striving to emulate the divine nature of great persons, he became unattracted to anything other than love for the supreme, for the all spiritual, all attractive. Good, right? It's fun to, it's like a puzzle to fit all these words in the right order in English. What's the yoga that Kapila spoke about? Straight Bhakti Yoga. Kapila talked about Sankhya Yoga. Kapila in Bhagavatam gave us the Pr17 Yoga, which is Bhakti in the context of Sati Yoga. Can Bhakti, Johnny asks, can the term Bhakti be universally applied to what is held sacred? Bhakti is kind of like the Greek word agape, which is generally reserved for this context of Bhagavan. No, it has a heavy connotation of being associated with a spiritual object of love. However, there's many common sayings like Matri Bhakti, love for your mother. They have like a love for your land, country, and all this stuff. It's described with the word Bhakti. So Bhakti just generically means love. But when you have all words that take their meaning in their context. So if you're talking about Bhagavat Bhakti, then that's Bhakti for Bhagavan. Can the term Bhakti be universally applied to what is held sacred or a form of universal love in others? Yeah, different people will understand Bhakti in different ways. Okay, let's continue. The next one we're going to do is the 11th text in the 23rd chapter, which is, when all of his endeavors aimed at the all-attractive, his pure existence completely, perfectly, and constantly dwelt upon that. Wisdom arose, generating a disinterest that was sharper than a knife and cut away the confusing and distorting coverings of his consciousness. Yeah, this has an interesting term in it. Tasyanyaya. Let me make this bigger for my old eyes. Tasyanyaya bhagavata parikrama shuddha sattvatmanastad anusang smarananupurtya jnanam virakti madabhun nishitena yena Cheda Sangshaya Padam Nija Jiva Kosham. Okay. So Tasya means like that. Or Tasya means his, and Anaya, like that. Bhagavata Parikrama. Parikrama is an interesting word to use here. Parikrama usually means to move around something. But Parikrama also means doing everything. Moving means doing, and pari means everything. So it can mean moving around, or it can mean doing everything. So by doing all of those Bhagavad Dharmas, something happens. That's what's going to be described in this text. With all of his endeavors aimed at the all-attractive, all of his endeavors parikrama, Shuddha Sattvatmanastat. He firmly achieved his true self. Shuddha Sattva Atma. So, I don't know. I know I got like one or two people at least who listen to these videos who are kind of deep in the streets with the Bhakti philosophy. So, you know, when you get to the stage of Bhav Bhakti, then it's defined as Shuddha Sattva Shakti. Permeates your being, saturates your being, saturates the Atma. And so that's actually, in detail, that's what he's achieving here, is Bhava Bhakti. He's getting Shuddha Sattva. But let's now talk about it in a more clear way, in a less technical way. The Atma means the self. Now the king but as a result of performing the Bhagavad Dharmas, all of them nicely, Bhagavata Parikrama, then he's going to achieve something special. Atma. He's going to achieve himself. What kind of self? The Sattva Atma. Now, you might know this word Sattva because it's famous. Sattva, Raja, Tamas. Sattva means truth. realness. It doesn't mean goodness or something. The translation of mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. It's just, I don't know why. Mode of goodness for sattva. Sattva means mode of the clarity, clear, true, real. That's what sattva means. Sat. Om tat sat. Sat. Sattva. Satness. Twa means ness. So sat means something real. Something that exists is sat. So sattva means real. So sattva atma means the real self. But further, even beyond that, is described as Shuddha Sattva Atma. Shuddha Sattva is different from Sattva. Sattva is a reality, but Shuddha Sattva is an ultimate reality, or a pure reality, a reality with no strings attached. Shuddha means without any blemish, without any fog or mist or blemish or distraction. So he's achieved the self, not just in sattva, not just the true self, but a shuddha sattva, an absolutely true self. Not what does he mean by no connections, no blemish? There's no conditions producing the self that have to be maintained or destroyed. He achieved the pure, true, ultimate self. Tasyanyaya bhagavata parikrama shuddha sattvatmanas. He achieved the Shuddha Sattvatmana by doing Bhagavata Parikrama. Tad. Oh, this one is good. What is this in English? This is a really hard one to say in Sanskrit too. His pure existence constantly, perfectly, and completely dwelt upon that. Tat, on that. On what? On Bhagavan and Bhagavan's relationship to his pure, true, absolute self. Tat anusamsmarana. Anusamsmarana. Anusamsmarana nupurtya. Fully. Purti means full, right? Fully, perfectly. Always. Purna. Tad anusamsmarana anupurtya. So, smaran means to remember, not in the sense of remembering your homework or remembering your phone number. Smara is also associated with lust. So smara means the kind of where you can't get something out of your mind, or something has colored or left a dent on your mind, or left its color or left its perfume on your mind. Samsmara. Samsmara means fully in smara. Samsmarana, anusamsmarana, tat anusamsmarana. So anu means it's still some sort of a practice, or he's still following, or it's in the mood of a follower, like a lover. So he's constantly enwrapped in smara of himself and Bhagavan. Tasyanyaya bhagavata parikrama shuddha sattvatmanas tadanusamsmarananupurtya. Then remember we talked about where there's cows, there's bulls. So now he's got the cow, which is the love. So now the bull of detachment and knowledge comes. Jnanam virakti mat. Jnana, which is powerful with virakti. Jnanam virakti mat. Virakti means detachment. Jnana means knowledge. This is a Saturn thing. And even a little bit in Mars, but mostly Saturn. Jnanam. Saturn carries jnanam and virakti. Detachment. Because of wisdom, because of really knowing what something really is. Then you don't feel so attracted. That's why we love to meet new people, because we don't really know what they are yet. Once you know what they are, you get detached from them, because they have flaws. Everybody has flaws. It's because everybody has flaws that we always want to meet a new person. Because it's only that initial period where you don't really know the person, where you can feel like they don't have a flaw. So jnanam, when you really know something, it generates virakti, detachment from it. Jnanam virakti mat abhun nishitena. Abhu came into being. Nishitena, it's very, very, very sharp. A very sharp cutting edge of jnana came into being. And then what did it do? Cheda. Cheda means to cut. Cheda means to cut and separate. Cheda sangshayam padam. Sangshaya means your confusion. And pada means like the place of it, the origin of it, the foundation of confusion. Samshaya padam. Jnanam virakti madabhun nishitena yena chena sanshaya padam. And what is the sanshaya padam? Nija jiva kosham. So this is, I translated as, wisdom arose, generating a disinterest that was sharper than a knife, and cut away all the confusing and distorting nija jiva koshams, coverings of his consciousness. Kosha is like a cocoon or a skin that goes around something. It's a sheath, like a sheath for a sword is kosha. The jiva is encased in several koshas. The jiva, or the core of what a living being is, the life force, which is consciousness, is encased in many things that it tries to use as its tools. But those tools, being imperfect, cause the jiva confusion and doubt about what's real. Jnana will cut those layers off the jiva so that it can see clearly. Jnanam virakti madabhun nishitena yena cheda sangshaya padam nija jiva kosham. Good stuff. Let's see if we let's get to the finish, then I'll see if you guys have any interesting questions or statements. Chinanya. Now this is really important too. I'm glad I kept going. Chinanya dhir adigatatma gatir nirihas. See, now imagine if you had a really good Sanskrit speaker with some music going. This poetry is off the charts. And you knew it. Imagine if you knew Sanskrit well enough to appreciate it. Chinnanyadhir adigatatma gatir nirihas. Tat tatyaje chinnadidam vayunena yena. This isn't even a particularly important verse. It's just one out of like 100, 18,000 verses, and it's so beautiful. Tat tatyaje chinnadidam vayunena yena tavanna yoga gatibir yatir apramato yavad gadagraja kata suratim nakuryat. So here's the one that means, now that he's cut away all of the jiva koshas, then he's got what is he cut away? He's cut away all the anyadhi. Dhimahi. Dhi means how you contemplate, what you think, your conception. And the root of all the contemplations is the concept of I. Who am I? That establishes how you contemplate everything else. So D ultimately means your self-concept. What you hold to be yourself is what D means. Anya D. An anya means another D. An extraneous D. An unnecessary D. An unnecessary sense of I. Chinna. Cut it. Chinnanya D. After he has now cut away all the anyadi, the unnecessary senses of eyes, then adigatatma gati. What can he get? What is he left with? Nothing? Zero? There's nothing left? He cuts away everything extraneous to himself and he's just a blob? A cosmic, spiritual, gelatinous cube? Adigata Atma Gatir. There he achieves his true self. He fully, completely achieves his true self. And then he becomes nirihas, fully fulfilled and fully desireless. Tatyaje. Then the way that he achieved that, he tatyaje. He gives it up. Or tatyaje is also he gives up the anyadis, but I think that's already stated, so it would be redundant to state it twice. Yeah, actually it says tatyaje chinad idam vayunena yena. The ways, the knowledge, the jnana vayuna that he used to cut away chidab idam, all this stuff, he gave it up. He's not holding on to his detachment. The detachment is not his goal. Attachment to Bhagavan is his goal. Detachment from everything else is secondary and relatively unimportant. So he's not holding on to that as some kind of mastery. Because you can. And then you can achieve great yogic siddhis. If you achieve complete detachment from the world, but you maintain a desire to operate in it, then you can operate very freely within the world, and you can transcend all sorts of laws of physics and material nature and everything. You achieve all these yogic siddhis. Pr17 has no interest in yogic siddhis, magic powers. Who cares? He wants love. Tavanna yoga gadibir yatir apramato. And then this is the part that clarifies, like, why would you give up? Why would he give up the method that gave him this result? So it's clarifying he got the result. Once you get the result from something, you don't need it anymore. Like, you take your medicine, you get better. You don't need to keep taking the medicine. Or you break your leg, it grows back. You don't need to keep wearing the cast after it grows back. So they clarify what exactly is it that he got. This is Maitreya speaking, so Maitreya is clarifying. Tavanna yoga gatibir atir apramanto yavat. Tavat yavat. For that long, this long. Tavat yavat. Tavat na yoga gatibir yatir apramanto. As long as you haven't gotten the goal of yoga, then you won't have gadagraja katatsu ritim, which is attraction rati for the kata, for the discussion of Gajagrata, which is Vishnu. Gadagraja, sorry. So conversely, as long as once you have attraction for the kata of Vishnu, then you need the processes of yoga. And then we also want to do this one last text. There's one last text that I translated this week, which also has some interesting Sanskrit in it. Evam savira pravara. Evam savira pravara samyogyatma samyogyatmanam atmani. Evam savira pravara samyojatmanam atmani brahma bhuto dridham kale tatyaja swam kalevaram. Having united himself completely with himself, there was no further purpose to continue his life as an emperor. It was then that he abandoned his body firmly and completely attained spiritual existence. So his life as a Vira Pravara, the emperor, the great hero, there's no more. He's going to tatyaja that. He's going to tyaga that. Why? Because he attained samyoga, or complete union, of what? Samyoga Atmanam Atmani. Of the Atma with the Atma, but listen, the endings of those words are different. The Atmanam and the Atmani. It's like the Anga and the Angi, the Amsha and the Amshi. It's imagine if you took a Navamsha and you separated it from its Amsha. The Navamsha would be meaningless. It would have no place in the zodiac. How would any planet ever occupy it? It's not in the Rashi. It can't be accessed by the planets. And then once that Navamsha gets back into the Amsha, then it's back in its perfect spot. So similarly, but similar to the relationship between a Rashi and an Amsha is the relationship between the Paramatma and the Atma. The Atmani and the Atmanam. The Atmanam is the little Rashi, is the little Amsha, and the Atmani is the complete one, the Rashi. So he did some yoga of that. He got himself, he realized himself, and he's got himself back in contact, back in unity, full unity, samyog, with the Supreme Self. So what does he need to keep working for? Nothing. Brahmabhuta, he achieved Brahman. He became a Brahman, a Brahmabhuta. Bu means a being. Brahman is complete pure spirituality. So by doing Atmani, Atmana, by some yoga of Atma and Atma, by uniting himself perfectly to himself, he becomes Brahmabhuta, a completely spiritual being. Dridham, fully at that, now, Dridham, definitely completely, at that moment, Kale, Tyachaswam Kalevram, he's going to give up his body. So next week we're going to hear the actual details of how he died. The yoga of how he died, the asanas and the breathing and all that stuff. I hope that you enjoyed this. I did, even though it's very cold in this room and it makes me yawn a lot. Let's see what you got here. In these chats. Let's see if you got anything good. What is the best method for gaining baking for Bhagavan? That's a funny typo you made there, Yellow Crystal Warrior. Bhakti, you gotta read, just, I don't know, the Bhagavatam has expressed that so many times. I'm going to tell you really quickly now, but it's going to give you no shraddha for it, but you have to hear about Bhagavan. That's the best method for getting bhakti. Yes, we know that. Deep in the streets, shout out to my brother-in-law. I think that your phone hates you. Yeah. Bhakti. Bhakti is spelled with an H after the B. It's Bhakti. You have to say it with proper pronunciation. Bhakti. Clarity, knowledge of Bhagavan. Okay, let me see. Any questions? Hey, Angelique. Good answer. That's the answer, Angelique. I'm so happy. Yeah, Flatlander is a good point. She says, so we must connect with our true self. I thought you said, we must connect with our true self to fall in love with Bhakti for Bhagavan. You won't really be able to love Bhagavan properly and fully until we realize who and what we are. Because we love ourselves. That's the inherent nature of reality. You'll always love yourself. So until you really understand Bhagavan, you will, and the self clearly, and the relationship, clearly you won't really have that full love. That's why it all happens at the same time. Let's see, is there any? Hey, Flatlanders says something nice. They say French is the language of love, but really Sanskrit is the language of love. Sanskrit is such an amazing language that it can be the language of anything. It's such a complete. It can even be the best computer language. It's so versatile. Yeah, Alpha asks, so the only way to love someone and be happy and satisfied is to find the attributes of Vishnu in them and love that. Will we ever be happy with someone other than self? Not really. You won't really ever even love anybody, truly. But we're on the way to understanding the self, and Bhagavan and other people are other selves, right? So they're not going to be unloved. I wonder if those koshas are like religious practices, are like those religious practices, Simone. One of the koshas will be your dharma, your sense of dharma. We have Elf and Tears. Machiavellian Empress, good point. Samurai asks, Bhagavan and Bhakti share the same root. Bhaj. Bhog. They're very close to the roots. The roots are very close, but I don't know if they're exactly the same. Bhagavan's root is Bhog, which means pleasure. And Bhakti's root is Bhaj, which means sharing. Flatlander, so when you connect with your true self, does that mean you're connecting with the root of yourself? That's great. That's right. Okay. So we will end it here. See you guys next week, and see you on Tuesday for Paladipika stream. Thank you.